round scores, the average is typically 1 or 2 under par. Like your most common single round scores are your 70s, your 71.
Sergio has been like, I can't wait to leave this place. Rah, 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 rah.
Yeah. And welcome in to another Tuesday night here on Divots and Pivots. We are live here on YouTube, brought to you by Belly Up Media, brought to you by Piper Golf, In the Clutch Apparel, and then powered by, because we get all of our information from Fantasy National Golf Club. Thank you to all those people. Couldn't do this without you guys. But yeah, Tuesday night here. This is episode 30. We've been coming at you guys for 30 weeks now, and this has been a great time. We want to keep it going as long as we can. We plan on big things for this show. So stick with us for the ride. You guys are all the originals, and we love you for that. But we're going to get into it. Look, we just finished the St. Jude Classic, leg 1 of the playoffs. We're done with getting cut in the PGA season now. We're down to 70. It's going to be a good week. But before we get into all of that with the BMW Championship, Mr. Bud Copeland, as always, the star of the show. How are you?
The star. The problem with stars is they're just implosions waiting to finish. Listen, this is the most wonderful time of the year. The playoffs that are going to just fade right into the NFL season. Yes. But before we get too deep into the topics du jour, I mean, you have to be living under a rock. There's no pun there. You literally have to be living under a rock to not know what's going on in the golf world right now. If you even have a frame of reference for the sport. Tiger, did you see who was riding shotgun with Tiger on his way to the BMW? Did you see who
I didn't see who was in the car with him. Who was riding shotgun with him?
So there's a great video.
Was it Rory?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
Rory's already at the BMW getting prepped.
That's true. Let's
put it this way. This guy's gonna be back next year, thank God. I hope. But at the same time, he didn't make the cut. Ricky Fowler was riding shotgun on Air Force Tiger, and it was a video. I don't know how Barstool got it or whoever got it or wherever it got out there. But there's a video from the Philadelphia airport or whatever Delaware private airport they flew into, of Tigre getting out of the plane, getting into his car. And then all of a sudden the camera just pans over. There's Ricky, duffel bag, white T-shirt, like, wait up, coach. I mean, it's the funniest thing. And it kind of makes you tilt your head because right before we went on, we were getting into the live drama. And let's be honest, we're gonna get into that because that's how we're filling the minutes in between swings. I mean, we got 2 big tournaments coming up and I'm excited about that. But before we get any deeper into live, what I wanted to hopefully start out with was a quick reflection on Happy Gilmore's caddy, Will Zalatoris.
Yes,
I've been chirping his name for months. I told you at the last major, no more Team Brooksy, Team Willie Z. Always bet on Will in a major. He's going to finish top 5.
And you mentioned last week the drama with his caddy might be the boost he needed, and man, you killed it.
So, and I didn't play him. People would be like, "Oh, you didn't play him?" No, because what I said was I wanted to see where it went because he was gonna absolutely make it to this week. I mean, he was guaranteed a spot in this week by his standing already. So I wanted to see what was going to happen, and maybe that was it. Maybe they were. I mean, God, it could have just been like, dude, I have like you're my buddy, and because we're friends, I can't see past that. This is the best thing, and what do you know? He gets into another playoff. I will say winning a playoff with a bogey is something you don't see every day. The
man still almost choked it away like 2 or 3 times there at the end, though.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I don't even call it. I mean, choked is.
I'm not talking about the shot you're about to bring up, but on the par 3. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the even though it was a par 3. I forget if it was par 3, but the island green. He put it in the woods before that. Like he was a bit all over the place. He was still a bit rattled by the moment.
The adrenaline was pumping, and he piped his drive way through the fairway. Thank God Thank God it caught a limb, dropped straight down, didn't go OB. Sepp Straka almost puts it in the water. You know, there's all of these things that were happening, but that's the PGA Tour any given week, and that's why it'll still be head and shoulders above the live for now. For now, we don't know. I'm not going to try to be Nostradamus and make myself look like a rear end by making predictions that I can neither prove nor disprove. But that level of drama, you can see. I mean, and I think it was Zinger right afterwards with the most obvious comment. But again, sometimes somebody has to be the one to say it. He said, no amount of money can buy the feeling that kid's feeling right now. And that's the truth. His entire life he's been thinking about that. So again, Liv is not going to die. It's going to just be something else. But I don't want to get into that without at least stopping and just Will Zalatoris, the trajectory he's had in the last 3 years. There's something coming out of the state of Texas with Scotty Scheffler and Willie Z kind of bookending this thing. And if Will Zalatoris goes on a run here, wins the FedEx Cup, he has no major to his name, but that means he will have had to win in 2 weeks. Does he all of a sudden come into the conversation with his runners-ups, whatever? His second place finishes at the majors this year, and then you get a FedEx Cup. Does that trump the Cam Smith Players Open big money year? Scotty Scheffler with his run at the beginning. Let's not forget Tony Finau's all of a sudden thrown his hat out there for maybe Player of the Year, because if he caps it with a FedEx Cup. So Will Zalatoris is the kid du jour, the topic du jour. I don't necessarily like him this week, and I do think that he's going to have a little bit of a hangover because he is guaranteed a spot next week in the Tour Championship. I think even if he were to go 0-2 barbecue this week, he's going to have built up such a lead that he's going to have a comfortable starting position at Eastlake. I don't know. I really wanted to make sure that we talked about him before we start chewing on all the juicy stuff that's happening down at Wilmington Country Club. On Thursday, it'll be the South Course, but right now it is somewhere in that clubhouse or back at the hotel in some conference room. Tigre, Ricky riding shotgun. And the reason I wanted to get there was because before the show, you mentioned a name that lives out there flexing. We talked about how all these leaks are all of a sudden coming out about who they think they can get. It's a great West Wing episode because everything in the world revolves around Aaron Sorkin.
For you, it does.
But it goes to my point. You said that you just heard Max Homa might go, and the first thing I think.
I didn't say that. I think he
that
will go.
Liv is saying we think.
Yes.
Okay, cool, great. Whether or not Homa's people have contacted X, Y, or Z. Now that it's out there, it's real, right? We're talking about it. And there was an episode of The West Wing where they do that. They just announced that somebody had accepted a position on some commission. And they look at the person, they go, is that real? He goes, guess it is now. Like, you just put it out there. And maybe Max Homa, they're playing on vanity. They could be playing on, he's a name, he's a personality. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell Max Homa goes anywhere. When he talked about his experience at the Open Championship this year, the guy I don't think he made the cut, and he still talks about it as if it was the greatest 2 days of his life because where he was, who he was with, what they were doing, and at the end of the day, what it means. Rory did say at the very beginning of all this, you're offering people with a lot of money more money. And I guess we've seen that to some people, there is no such thing as too much money here. And again, that's not a knock on them. I don't fault anybody for taking the offers that are put in front of them and the opportunities put in front of them. I just think it goes back to, for some people, for your Scotty Schefflers, who is still driving his same Chevy, whatever, that's got 178,000 miles on it. For Max Homa, who genuinely probably wants to, instead of say, hey, grandkids, here's $50 million that I've set aside in trust throughout the years. Instead, maybe he works his ass off and has enough to put a little aside, but then gets to say, here's me with Tiger at the President's Cup. Here's me with Tiger at the Open Champion. Here's me winning my first major because I'm allowed to keep playing at Augusta. I saw something floating around. Would you rather, and I want to know, would you rather go play Augusta National or be a fly on the wall in this players meeting right now?
Oh, dude, I did not think that's where you're going with that question. Look, I think just because of it's in the players meeting right now for me, just because of the world that me and you live in and the way we watch golf, there's so much to that. Plus, you're sitting in a room with the guys that are in that room as well. It's hard to beat that.
Arguably the top, and it's only the top 20, right?
Sure.
I got a feeling it's the 20.
Select.
And I doubt it's just straight 1 to 20 I bet it's the top 20 needle movers, so to speak.
Exactly. Look, Tiger knows who the most influential guys on the tour, and that's who he's going after. Not influential to the audience, but influential to the players within the tour itself.
I mean, and my new best friend, Alan Shipnuck, earlier on Twitter was kind of giving this update, because this is where this is happening right now. It's all coming out on Twitter. They're going to get it before ESPN touches it or the Golf Channel.
To be covering that down there this week and this just happened.
Somebody knows a bag. Somebody knows a cart attendant. Somebody knows a bartender. Somebody knows the assistant superintendent who's just happens to be hanging out in the parking lot. Like there's some, and that's the beautiful thing about this whole sports journalist or sports news media industry is that those people exist and they do want to do it for the right reason. So they're going to get this story out there. But I mean, this is going to be seen as a pivotal moment now. For those of you who know me or don't know me, I abhor hyperbole. We live in a hyperbolic world. Everything is the greatest this ever and the most fantastic whatever. We don't let the medicine take too often. But if you look at the development over the last 8 months and you start to draw the parallels between the last time the tour was fractured and what came out of it, everything seems
so close.
So close. Yeah. I mean, we're not. What do you mean close? We're there. Like, it's there. Now, the question is going to be, what happens next? You got Davis Love III out there talking about boycotting the U.S. Open, which I've been, man. I've looked up to him forever, but that is, and I think one of those spoken from someone who's had a beautiful, bountiful career to say to others, like, why don't you prove a point? All right, Kat, why don't you step away from the President's Cup and say, I'm not moving forward until we figure out what to do with Liv. As long as they're around, I'm not going to be in the game. But no, he's out there kind of trying to peer pressure and talk to these kids who, I mean, go pound sand, old man.
They still need that U.S. Open.
Yes, this might be the only time. And so I would say, no disrespect. No, but I mean, in reality, I think that's kind of an out of touch position to take. He's right in the sense that that's the influence they have. But Mike Wan and the guys, the guys and girls, the folks over at the USGA, would just look around and say, next person up. You want to give up your exempted? You want to give up your exempted spot into our Open Championship? We had X thousand entries this year, and I mean, how many of them lipped out a putt on 18 to miss? I mean, we got to pause for a moment and understand that nobody is bigger than the game. And I think some of the guys who jumped ship to go to Live have realized that like they can go. They're not so big that that this is going to sink them. This media storm will pass and everybody will focus on the higher level stuff like we are. And so to presume that anybody taking their ball and going home is going to be the answer to this is, to me, short-sighted. And that's why I think you do have Tiger, who another thing that I would kill for would be the communication between him and Jay Moynihan. I mean,
I saw. So I think was it you that mentioned it on Twitter earlier today, or
no? It was actually what I was about to get to, which is my new best friend, Mr. Shipnuck, just basically was giving us some updates. And at the end, his comment was, Tiger is basically the de facto commissioner of the tour right now.
And he mentioned something about what is, and it'd be curious to know what the communication is between him and the commissioner. Is he speaking for the commissioner as like a player representative, or is this him taking a hold of the league basically? And I do think the Ricky Fowler riding shotgun with him, like being the one that's going there with him, like look, I'm not gonna say it's his right hand man for the whole push. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know. But the fact that he's that close to him, they're obviously talking about it before they get there. It's interesting because it was just 2 days ago that Ricky's quote came out talking about the Live Tour and talking about how it's not that, like, he's obviously made the choice to stay on the PGA, not go to the Live. But he said it wasn't necessarily a choice. It was just this is what he had always saw for himself, was to be on the PGA. But I'm wondering if within his quote about how the Live is kind of represented right now, and I'm about to read you the quote, I'm wondering if it speaks to maybe give us a hint on how the players are going to be viewing it coming out of this meeting now, because I think it's interesting because he's so close to Tiger in this. But this is the quote word for word from Ricky. It says, "It can attract potential new audiences just because it's different. At the same time, it's not what golf has always been. If there was a perfect world, there would be a way to live together, because to me, they're very different things." Then that's the end of the quote. Actually, I thought it went on from there. But the fact that he's obviously saying, like, in a perfect world, the Live and the PGA get to exist and grow the game of golf. Do Do you think that's the way Tiger's going into this meeting saying the same thing, or that same sentiment where he wants all the players to kind of buy into that idea that, hey, let's find a way to coexist here. Let's not, spout off at the Live Tour guys when they come and play these PGA Tour events. Let's let them make their decisions and let's just focus on golf. Or do you think they're in there talking about, no, we're the PGA will reign forever. Let's stomp out the Live.
I don't think they're. I was with you, and I was about to say a little bit of both until you went stomping.
Yeah. I was trying to give the two extremes.
That's a little extreme. You say the word stomp, and I immediately think of Ed Norton standing in his boxers. And if you know what I'm talking about, it's the most cringeworthy thing ever. So
I didn't mean that type of. Geez.
I know. I honestly think it's the former. I think coexistence is the.
Yes.
It's not only, and it's not that, again. I don't think there's no dearth of talent out there. I mean, genuinely, I think you take the the next 10 up from the Corn Ferry, and you just keep doing that, saying, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, y'all are going to Live. All right, bring 5 more up. It's going to level out, because what you are talking about, when you get to pro sports, you get to like the NBA. There's only 400 players in the NBA, right? Roughly 400 players on these starting rosters or on these active rosters in the NBA. Out of how many hundreds of thousands, millions of people who play the sport, and then the hundreds of thousands who play it competitively, and then the tens of thousands who play it at the highest collegiate level and international level, and then this pyramid that goes up and up and up. Yep. If you are Bradley Beal, if you are Zion Williamson, and it doesn't take us long. Now, the only reason I put those two next to each other was because Zion actually is one of those that might be fading. Bradley Beal gave one of these talks to a bunch of youngsters, like, this is why you have to work, because I'm safe. Like, there's like, you're not going to outwork me. It was a mentality thing. But I do think that would eventually, that's what's going to happen. We're going to have another year of attrition, and it might not even be a year. And I think that kind of might be this thing where, who knows? What I heard was literally, and that was the quote, literally everything's on the table. And so when they might say, okay, after Eastlake, you have until the end of the year to decide what you're going to do. And that would be the equivalent of stomping. I don't think they're stomping anybody, but I don't think they're going to draw the gauntlet. I think they really are going to say, let's just press pause. Everybody put their guns down. Liv's got a couple more events the Liv can keep operating. Let's be honest. They're not making any money right now. Greg Norman even admitted it. He goes, this year's about the product, showcase the product, attract the investors, get the talent in line, which they've done. And they've got a pretty good setup, and it's even like Ricky said, it's an intriguing idea, and it might be a landing place. Now, the money might have been inflated from the get-go, but hey, that's capital raise, right? Sometimes you have to go over the top just to get things going. And,
people do it all the time in business.
I don't think they're signing $100 million contracts to every golfer who comes over to Live. Instead, I think it's going to be much more of here's the opportunity, and it can be a lucrative opportunity. What they're going to end up doing is just figuring out how to coexist and basically say, all right, nothing changes. The majors will not, because U.S. Open doesn't give any exemptions to PGA Tour wins. It's just the PGA Championship and the Masters.
Yep.
And so they're going to say the same thing. Hey, no harm, no foul. If you want to go play Live, you can go play Live. That doesn't change your entry requirements into our majors. You still have to. And now there are other ways for them to come in, such as through official World Golf Ranking points, and that's where there's going to have to be a little maybe give and take to say, maybe the Asian Tour events, if you start saying, look at who we're bringing over, they go, all right, bloop, 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 bloop. You get a few more World Golf Ranking points in those events, and that's where they're going to be able to feed it in. And I guarantee you the DP World Tour is going to just basically, once Live and the PGA Tour kind of sort it all out, DP is going to go, all right, we're good. And if you want to come here too, you can. If you don't, we're fine with that. But the coexistence is where this is going. I don't see.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't see it as a we're going to put down our gun first as a show of respect. Now they want to coexist from a position of strength, because at the end of the day, Tiger's right. There's no Live without the PGA Tour.
100%.
If you don't, and that's so now I'm talking myself in circles, because now I could also see those guys saying, we built this thing, dadgummit.
Well, and that's why I'm curious to see what the sentiment is of the players and their quotes coming out of this meeting, because like I said before this meeting, before Ricky's quote there about in an ideal world we coexist, it's been very much, Rory, JT, them kind of not being aggressive, but they are clearly defending the PGA and the history and the ritualistic side of the PGA and what it means in the world of sports in general. So do we continue to see this defense of the PGA, or do we see them not start to support Liv, but instead change their tone to talking about just pushing golf forward? Like, stop being a defense, and then do they go on more of an offensive? Let's just grow golf, but they're not specifically talking about Liv being part of that. Does that make sense?
It makes 100% sense, and I don't think anything changes. I think you've got your soldiers out there. You've got your BSD standing with their cannons, firing shots across the bow, and just because this isn't going to be a truce, this is going to be a ceasefire. There's a good analogy for you. This is not going to be a peace treaty. This is going to actually be a cessation of hostilities, but everybody gets to stand there. And really, they're the only people with guns out are the tour, and rightfully so. They're the ones who are being challenged. At the end of the day, This is a business. To quote Mr. Christian Vasquez, who I do think is coming back next year because he's going to be a free agent, and his reaction to getting traded live. Did you see that when he got traded?
I didn't see. I haven't been watching baseball. The Sox suck. So
they suck so bad. Well, so this will make sense. All right, quick pause. Coexistence is the answer. That's what we're going with. Yes, Ricky was brought along to say, look, like, I'm the prime example. They want me because of what I would have brought, and they thought they had me in a moment of weakness, and instead I'm dancing with the girl who brought me. Cam Smith, his thing. It's funny when you see the guys that are over there, they're either international or they're quote unquote over the hill. Only reason I say Dustin Johnson's over the hills because he's 37, 38. He's got 2 majors already. And he even flat out said, like, I don't want to play golf for the rest of my life.
Well,
and so,
I think maybe a better way than saying over the hill, because that's always, with age, maybe it's either they're up and comers or they're been there, done that. Like they've lived the golf career, basically.
Yeah, they're vets. They've got the scars. They maybe have a handful of wins, but like we talk about, like a guy like Paul Casey, kind of don't fault him. He's not, he's played in so many Ryder Cups already, and he's come close with his majors. Maybe he's going, all right, I'll take my chances over here, and if I get another shot at a major, great. If not, or they're also playing the odds where it's like, well, I can always just go qualify for the Opens because that's the nature of them. And I do think that both the RNA and the USGA are going to stay the heck out of this. They're going to live above it. They're not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And but yeah, man, I'm like refreshing Twitter every 20 seconds. I want somebody to give me something right now, just that meeting alone and how pivotal it's going to be, for the future of the game.
Who would you say Adam has been the most up to date with it? With the
Alan Shipnick.
Alan, sorry, I just called him Adam, didn't I?
Him and Dan Rappaport have both been.
Dan Rappaport, that's who I've seen too.
Johnny on the spot, and that's not to say if other people haven't got there, but that's who I seem to see. What?
No, I was just looking to see if there's been an update. Did you get one before I could see?
Plays. No, I think people are on Twitter doing the embodiment of what we're talking about. Which for the people in their cars right now listening to this on podcast, are like, guys, this is great. This is some great podcast material. But that's what's going on right now.
It is
the whole freaking.
It's happening. It's happening as we're doing this.
And the whole universe revolves around, the people not the whole universe, but the whole competitive golf landscape can be shifted by the people in this room. Back to what you were saying about the people who have come out, Billy Horschel pulling 0 punches, being like, listen, I feel like just people are being fake. They've lied to my face. And so, to hell with them. I mean, he didn't say that, but that was basically it.
Well, and that's the other side of this too, is that sure, we hear I don't want to say excuse, but we hear the reasonings that are put in the media by these players that go to live or choose not to go to live and why they don't go to live, but we don't know what is being talked about in these locker rooms and these clubhouses, or, during travel between the players themselves. What, obviously, according to Billy Ho, there's been some bullshit in the conversations amongst other players. So these, I think a lot of this is there's been a crowd out there that has said like, oh, mostly the Live supporters who were saying, like, basically calm down, Rory, calm down, JT, calm down, the PGA Tour players who are coming out a bit harsh and whatnot. But look, they're seeing it from a whole different side where they do have personal relationships with some of these guys, and maybe they were lied to by some of these guys, or who knows. It's a whole different thing for them.
I'm going to do two things with that. There's two ways that, because I do agree with you where I want to empathize with them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when they're all independent contractors, all independent businessmen, they all operate as those entities and those brands. They're not in the business of being honest with their competition. So to the point, because they also don't know what other conversations are going on. I guarantee you, this is something that I'd be willing to bet anybody out there. Hit me up at This Bud's for you. If we can find proof of it one way or another, I guarantee you they're like looking at each other when they show up and say, "Oh, I knew it. I knew you were being talked to." I mean, it's almost like they're pledging a secret society at some high-end school when then you finally see somebody in your pledge class. You're like, holy shit, you too? Because they are holding things close to their chest because they know that there's limited spots in this whole thing.
That's true too. It's a very good point.
Greg Norman's playing with house money, literally and figuratively, and he's offering these guys, and he's got to be saying, hey, tick, tick, tick. There's, my, and I mean, if I'm Greg, I'm just constantly going like this. Oof.
Yeah, he's definitely got he's not short of possibilities.
Now, one thing I don't want to get lost in all of this was the announcement earlier this year that there's going to be an approach to do a basically live a female edition or a ladies edition. I think they're just going to call it like a ladies live or something like that, with same kind of scenario, not even comparable. But they're talking about same money, like identical prize money. I'll be curious if Nelly Korda gets offered the same thing that Dustin Johnson. That's
one way the Live could grab an audience is by doing, because that's obviously been a big thing in the sports where obviously with the U.S. men's and women's soccer and the getting paid and there's arguments for both ways, whatever. If they really wanted to grab an audience, they would if they did do a women's league, they would just same payment. It would be identical pay structure or a prize structure, whatever you want to call it, or just have them all compete together. I'm not against that for the Live Tour, like men and women compete against. Just freaking go for it. Like, why not?
Would you? Oh God, you ready to get controversial? Would you? would you have them tee off from the same tees? I like how hard that question just hit you in the chest.
It's yeah. You know what? Yeah, I would. Go for it. Just make it equal all around, and whether that means
let the chips fall where they may.
Now look, because there's science. I want to be careful on how I talk about this now. What I'm trying to get to is the whole strength aspect. Is that there's different physiologies about the strength of why they have the different tee placements already as they are. So maybe you go up and go down, meet in the middle somewhere, and make it fun. I don't know.
I would actually split the difference is what I would do. I wouldn't go back or forward. I would split the difference and acknowledge what you said, the arguments both for and against. Because at the end of the day, the game, and pros will tell you this too, the game's 150 yards in. And so, for the vast majority, they could also identify courses and setups and everything like that to where it doesn't matter if you can hit at 320 because for example, I played in a scramble at Black Swan Country Club in Georgetown, Mass. And I guess I'll be honest, not to put them on blast, but it was just burnt out. The greens were in phenomenal shape. Yeah. Everything else was just burnt out. We weren't hitting off dirt though. I want to say that to my group because it was a scramble. I'm like, listen, A, we get to place the ball, and B, we're not hitting off of dirt. It's just dead grass. I was like, you're still hitting off a decent surface. But anyway, that was the kind of course where one of the holes that we played was like a 422 yard par 5. And at first you're licking your chops and you walk up and you go, oh God, at 225, there's this like drop off. And then there's a 75-yard carry before there's another landing area. So, I mean, on a par 5, I was sitting there like with, hitting my 5-iron because everybody's like, let's just try to get as close to the edge as we can and let the roll out and everything. Those are the kind of courses and setups I could see an event work out because let's be honest, the more traditional courses that you would argue for, the winged foot, the classic designs like that, they were designed for men by men in an era where things were thought of in that manner, except for places like Augusta National and Cypress Point out in California. And God, I can't remember her name. I have to look it up here in a second. But it's the woman who was a phenomenal amateur golfer out here on the East Coast, and then she went out west because she ran into Bobby Jones and Tillinghast, Alistair McKenzie. Sorry, she ran into them at a charity tournament, and then McKenzie was like, "I got this project I want you to help me out with and give me." So there's a par 3 carry at Cypress Point, and I want to say it's the 17th. It's the most famous hole. Look up the most famous hole at Cypress Point for me.
Okay, I'll look that up right now. You keep
Alistair McKenzie. She designed, because now it's going to kill me. Because
let's see, is it the 16th? Par 3.
Yes. Over water, there's like a 200-yard forced carry over the ocean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know this hole. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you're describing it exactly. Yep.
So anyway, she's the golfer that I have in mind because Marion Hollins, Hall of Famer in the course design world. She was the one who out there who at Cypress Point spotted that hole and insisted on the carry. And her whole point was, everything's not supposed to be easy. Like every par 3 doesn't have to be accessible. It just has to be reasonable. Yeah. And so there's quotes out there all the time about if you have any problems with that, McKenzie even says, take it up with Marion Hollins. Marion Hollins was also his eyes and ears on Augusta National on the property. McKenzie wasn't there. She was, and was reporting back to McKenzie. And when the local team, the president of the club at the time kind of raised some initial objections about how the information was going to flow, he just said, I defer everything to her. I mean, Marion Hollins, phenomenal story. Not as phenomenal as what's going on inside. Actually, I don't want to be unfair to Miss Hollins.
I would say because this is not the second time you brought up the Augusta and Marion Hollins story.
Is it really? I love her place in golf lore and history. And it is. It's kind of the original. I don't know, man. It's she just didn't pull punches. She hung. She could kick ass and take names, and she had a vision. And I think she was also like an equestrian person before that. So horse people are just a different breed, pun intended. But listen, speaking of the horses, we're down to 70 horses, no cuts.
Yes. Well, I was just gonna say, let's put the live stories to bed, unless, of course, we get any breaking news from Dan Rappaport or Alan Shipmont.
I told Alan to just text me before you tweet it.
So we'll keep an eye on that for you. But we got some housekeeping stuff to do because, as always, we got to shout out Piper Golf, Piper.golf. You go over there, you take their quiz, find out exactly which type of their golf balls is going to fit your game the best. The quiz is fantastically accurate, and they'll set you up with what you need. They got hats over there. They got some apparel. They're going to be looking to expand that. So go check them out at Piper.golf. And when you do place an order at the checkout, use discount code DIVPIV, that's DIVPIV. You'll get a 10% discount. So make sure when you go on there, DIVPIV, DIVPIV for your 10% discount. And also, special little, not an official sponsor of the show, but went out and did something in the last couple days here with the fine folks over at Pristine Auction. And here's what we're going to do from this point on right now. Well, it's not going to be but this is the first you're hearing of it right here. From here on, for the next week, go to our YouTube channel. If you're already here right now, it's quick. Click the subscribe button. All you have to do is click the subscribe button. If you're subscribed to this show, come next Tuesday's show, we will be picking a winner live to receive a signed 8x10 photo of Xander Schauffele by Xander Schauffele. So if you want to win that photo, that authentic autograph photo by Xander, all you have to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. So check it. Just hit the little subscribe if you're listening now. If you're listening on podcasts, get over to YouTube. It's Divots and Pivots on YouTube. The link will be on our Twitters at Real Mr. Mallet. And once again, our Twitter handles are not shown. What the hell? 2 weeks in a row.
Fire the intern.
I know. So go to either one of our accounts at Real Mr. Mallet, at The Spuds For You. You can find the YouTube link on there as well. And just subscribe. get in on your chance to win that. We will pick that live on the show next week at 8:00 here. But yeah, so that's that pristine auction. We'll hoping to do more with you in the future, but let's get into the BMW championship here, because look, we're down, like you said, we're down to 70. Oh, the hand's coming up. Do we got something?
Stop it.
Uh-oh.
And I might be late. I might be late to this, but this is Dan Rappaport sharing something from Alan Shipnuck. Speaking of people who have their finger on the pulse, this is from 8/11. So
this just happened 1 minute ago. Are you talking about that? The one that Alan tweeted 23 minutes ago, and
about Patrick Reed?
Yeah.
Patrick Reed sued Brandel Chambly and the Golf Channel for defamation in U.S. court, claiming, quote, calculated malicious attacks have had a direct effect on Mr. Reed's livelihood. The suit also claims the defendant. All right, that's it. The benefit of the doubt on Patrick Reed just ran.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
Here's what affected your livelihood was your sketchy ass behavior and your refusal to at least acknowledge. And you know what else really did it? You know what started the whole fucking rock rolling downhill was his choker. The minute he went on live national television to play competitive golf with a choker was the first day that he started dying. R.I.P. Patrick Reed.
We're gonna have to radio in Chad Eckert to fully denounce Patrick Reed. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if he's ready to do that.
I listen. I'm not one of those people. I'm not gonna hold Chad. That actually would be great though.
It would be hilarious.
So do you still? Listen, I wouldn't bet the house on Patrick Reed, but I would put some wagers on him when he hits the PGA Tour Asia. But seriously, suing for defamation.
That's grand.
You knew what you were doing when you got dressed.
Yep. So
sorry. Do you want to talk about actual golf?
I thought you had some great breaking news there, and it was just hopefully.
I'm so sorry.
Your hand just came up so fast. You were like, "Stop the presses." If we had a sounder, I would have played it prematurely there, but
no. But we should talk about the BMW.
Let's talk real golf.
Wilmington Country Club, the South Course.
Yes.
Really, my keys this week. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. We got the top 70, which also means the cream has risen to the top. Strokes gained home life is going to be always my differentiator, which in the real world translates to things like recent form, calculated ownership, that kind of stuff factors in.
I'm riding form a lot this week and going forward, honestly.
So form called you back. And then, but as far as like the actual skill set's concerned, par fours. We're at a level now where par fives, you just kind of assume that these guys are going to make birdies because that's how good they are. And then so par three is always, no matter what course you're on, if you birdie a par three, you're gaining ground on the field. So really the rat race, or I guess we're not doing a rat race anymore. Now we're in the thoroughbreds. We're in the horses. The horse race is really happening on the par fours this week. So look for your ball strikers, look for your putters, and look for your guys in their par four efficiency. That's my mental model. But did you get any deeper when you started going into Fantasy National?
I mean, we're pretty much on the same page there. Strokes gained putting, sheesh, what a mumble that was. Strokes gained short game.
Mr. Gilmore, I'm your kid.
I'm right there with you on par fours. I did go a little bit more specific and did for this course specifically 450 to 500 yards. And then birdies are better gained because as we saw last week, there was some low scores. So we gotta chase those. We gotta be able to jump ahead some guys. So I want to find those birdie makers. And yes, and I stuck it to 4 this week because look, I did want to put a higher emphasis on the recent form, and the storylines because like you said. It's funny because I've been back and forth on Willie Z. I'm playing him this week because he came out and proved that he could win last week. I still didn't love the way he had to do it because I think it still could have easily been another second place finish where we're looking at him as a choke job and the caddy had nothing to do with it. And it's the same old Willie Z. So I don't think we were far off. I don't think we were far off from having the same storyline on him. It just happened to break his way this week. And that's ultimately what I think is going to stop me from playing him is that he can still get your DraftKings points, but we really need to find the guys who can win at this point. There's only 70 golfers. And the thing I want to point out especially when playing DraftKings for this week and the week going forward, ownership calculations are now going to look differently. So obviously in the past, if someone is projected 25% ownership, that's a hard pass, no chance in hell right away. There's no edge in that. People who are like 16% ownership this week, that's almost the same as looking at like 11 or 12% ownership in weeks where there's your normal 150 player golfer field. So because of the smaller field, ownerships are going to be higher than normal. So just when you see some projected ownerships, if you're doing those calculations, don't freak out when you see some of those high percentages. You gotta look at them within the vacuum of only 70 players and kind of roll with that. So, because look, I think I'm going to play Tony Finau this week, and he's projected 25% ownership because he's just one of those. He's one of those home life guys. He's one of those. He's just on fucking fire right now, and you can't not play him.
Just saw the stat: 10 rounds, 10 consecutive rounds in the 60s. The last guy to do it went on a run of 14. Goes by Eldrick. And I agree with what you're saying. You got to eat chalk this week, and you just want to make sure you're eating the right chalk, eating the most chalkiest chalk of the.
I don't agree that you have to eat chalk this week, though. We'll get to that later.
No, here you want to be the rightest of right. So if and I'm not saying that like just because everybody picked somebody, but you want to be. There's going to be 4 or 5 guys that everybody picks. Like you said, you're going to have to swallow some 25%, maybe like a 28, 29%.
You don't want your whole lineup to be, you don't want the whole lineup to be chalky as normal.
Because there's no real leverage play with everybody making the weekend. You have opportunities for points on points on points, which makes it hard for you to make up your 250-point deficit that we have.
It does.
2 events. It's not impossible though, because I'm with you.
It's not impossible.
I'm looking at Tony Finau. So this week, and if you're new to the show, welcome. For those who've been with us before, we've stopped going kind of in deep in each tier. Instead, we look for our 3 or 4 kind of Piper Gold plays for the guy who plays the gold Pipers over here, and we like to show where we would plant some flags or some folks that you really could build a lineup around. Sometimes we go down to the 6-7K range because we know we got to get some value play, and that's where with those leverage plays. But here it's much more about being that's what I mean by not necessarily swallowing all the chalk and just taking the popular plays. I'm like, this is where the skill comes into play, because you have to be the rightest of right. You're gonna go for 6 for 6, but you want 3 of those 6 to be in the top 20 if you can, or maybe top 10.
Exactly. It's not about finding guys to make the cut now. It's about finding guys in the top 15.
Also on that, I don't know. You said you already have your lineup picked.
Yes.
You mentioned that again. You did your homework. We've been through what we think is important. We agree on Tony Finau. We'll go ahead and just put that one out there. You can mark it 8, dude. It's fine. Tony Finau is playing kind of the best golf there is. I'm gonna fade Willie Z this week as well, just like I faded him last week, and I'm probably gonna go all in next week, no matter what happens this week, because I do think he's in that mental space. I don't care if I miss on him this week. Again, I'm going to give him a little space to breathe. And Willie, I'll see you at Eastlake. A guy that I like, though, another kind of fan favorite for me personally, is Justin Thomas, because of the par 4 effect.
We're going to have the same damn lineup this week.
No, because we're only probably sharing the 3 smartest plays in our opinion. And also because there's a little bit I liked he posted this morning, and it was like 55 degrees. And he had a little beanie on his head, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's cold." It's like, you golfers have gotten soft.
He is the man who owned the Hawaii swing, so
that's true. And he is from Kentucky. But it gets cold. It gets cold in Kentucky. No, but Tony Finau, I agree. Justin
and Thomas, Tony Finau only at 9,700 too. It seems crazy that he's not in the 10K with how he's playing right now.
That's what I was about to say. Even with JT at 10-1, that gives you a little bit of breathing room, because with the top 70, you can absolutely go down into 60 and 70. Down to those bottom 20, because you're still talking about the top 70 players in the. Well, I'm going to say in the world, the top 70 players on tour that are playing the game right now. So, if you want to get a couple of JJ Spawn's down there at 6,000, and the guy had a week last week, and he's on a run. And remember what I said?
He faded a little bit. He faded a little bit at the end, but he had a good.
But he did what he
was looking better
to get to this week. And I think you and I were talking about it. I might have been talking to somebody at the Scramble about how the leaderboard was they were like, it was at the Scramble. A couple guys were like, none of the big names, these guys missed the cut, this, that, or the other. And they're like, you had all these no names up there. And I kind of paused and I asked him, I was like, well, they all were fighting for their lives. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Rory and Scotty checked out or anything like that. There is less pressure, and maybe who knows? They could have been. Tiger was famously working on a stinger specifically for Augusta the year that he won the Players back in 2000, and they could have been doing something like that where there's something they're working out in their game. They're comfortable in their position
because they know they can.
Yeah, they've already punched their ticket to Eastlake, and so they're going to come back this week.
I'm not against. Well, look, I'm not gonna play Rory this week myself. But then again, I'm only playing one lineup. So if I was playing more, I'd probably have some shares of him. But someone like Rory who missed the cut, everyone says, "Oh, he missed the cut last week," and he's 10,500. Like, I expect his ownership is probably going to be a little bit lower than some of the other higher price guys. He's still 20% projection. But Rory's someone that, to your point, I think could turn it back on this week and show up because he's been playing great golf up until last week. He didn't play good, but he was playing great golf before that. I don't, and he's a guy who can turn it back on.
And so Rory also, he took, there's a great quote from him. This isn't direct, but he basically said after the Open, I took 2 weeks off. He goes, he's like, I don't know if I ate a vegetable. I don't know if I swung a golf club. He was like dead serious. He's like, I didn't do anything. So again, knowing that he could come back, show up to the FedEx St. Jude and just kind of knock the rust off before the BMW.
And I think that's exactly what that was. But look, like you alluded to, say you pay $9,700 for Tony Finau, like I'm doing. Say you're paying $10,100 for Justin Thomas, like I'm doing. You do still have to do the math and find some value lower in, but I'm going right back to the well for me. Mr. JT Poston still at only 7,300, who is another guy who was playing some of the best golf he's ever played on tour right now. These are the guys who we've seen it before in these playoff tournaments. They feel different to these guys out there, and when they catch a run, they tend to ride that run through all of the tournaments, or at least as far as their ranking allows them to go. But JT Poston, I'm going to play him again. He's 7th in putting in the field, 1st in short game in the field. And then top 30 for birdie or better and par fours between 450 and 500. Like JT Poston, I'm going right back to the well. He's done me well the last few times I've played him. So I'm going there at 7,300. And with how he's been playing, still under 9% projected ownership. He's at projected 8.3 right now.
You shouldn't be sharing all your notes. I didn't have. By the way, first of all, I was going to bust your balls for you saying "well" twice that close together, but you walked right through it like a pro, and I appreciate you for that. JT Poston I like too because I flagged him. I haven't counted him out, but you spoke my theory, which is I'm going to say it right now. Next week, strokes gained, putting, ball striking. Those are my two basically. Who's hitting it the best and who's putting it the best, and that's who's going to win next week. That rings true for this week, right? We talked about putting being one of the main factors. JT Poston, God, he's been just raining birdies ever since for the last few weeks,
which could dry up. You never know; it could dry up, but I'm going to ride it as long as he shows me he can do it.
Yeah, and there's a guy out there who's not necessarily up with the putting, but Tom Hoagie is a name that I'm bringing that back up because Tom Hoagie
pretty low in my rankings.
No, well, you can take your rankings and shove it. 21st in ball striking, 13th in approach, and 44th in putting. On the bottom half of the putting, but if he is striping it and he's striking it, and he's one of those guys down there, 6,300. So he's got to perform this week to make it to next week. There's that extra effort. I just like him as a dark horse. I'm not putting him out there for one of my plays. He jumped out at me just as like a strokes gained home life. One of those. Yep. Who's another JJ Spawn who might come out of the woodwork this week to say, remember me?
Turn it on to stay on for one more week, kind of thing. Yeah. And that is something you reminded me of a good point though, because as we are spitting out some of these rankings in the field, in most weeks when we sit there and say, 35th in whatever stat we're talking about, usually is all right, pretty good. Well, in this week it's the bottom 50% because we're talking out of only 70 guys. So when you're listening to us, if you hear us say 35, ranked 35th. For instance, Zandashoff is 35th, par fours, 450 to 500 yards. Most weeks it's like, yeah, that's passable, whatever. This week it's not that great because he's right in smack dab in the middle of the field. So just keep that in mind as you listen to this talk as a little disclaimer.
Russell Henley keeps on popping up. I mean, he's hitting the ball well, but he's second in approach, not eighth around the green. It's the putting, man. I don't know why.
Well,
I gotta stay away from anything that's not top 20 in putting.
Well, so you know who's been, and that's the exact kind of approach I took. Other than, and that's kind of why I'm not going to play Rory.
Yeah, but that brings Wyndham Clark into play.
You played quite a few times, but look, someone who keeps popping for me too is Tyrrell Hatton.
Tyrrell.
But what scares me about him is that he doesn't necessarily make a ton of birdies. Like he can birdie, but it's like
a nut job.
He is, and he's been, I believe, and look, he's under 7% projected ownership right now, and he's been playing good. He finished 31st last week, 8th at the Wyndham before that. He finished 11th at the Open. So I mean, Tyrrell Hatton is someone that I could be looking at as well.
I like Tyrrell Hatton. I've always loved Tyrrell Hatton. Patrick Cantlay is kind of sleepy there at 9,900. I don't hate it, don't love it.
Made a late push last week.
Yeah, if his putter gets hot this week, look out.
Yes.
Well, that's what happened last year. It got hot, and then it just stayed hot, and he was making everything kind of the way that Cam Smith is making everything right now.
Yeah, well, Cam Smith's withdrawn, so don't be playing Cam Smith.
No, but I actually speculate whether or not he's going to show up to Eastlake next week at this rate, because if the rumors are true and he's gone for $100 million. And this players meeting is happening, which means he might be like, screw this, I'm out, mate. Like I'm going to take my.
It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if a vet or a group of vets had pulled him aside and say, "Hey, look, man, with all that's going on with you in the Live Tour right now, like, yeah, maybe you don't. Maybe you step away."
And he would have done this and pound sand. This is my life and my money. I believe he might have some. I mean, we're also skeptical as hell because that's what that's what makes
it's fun.
That's what makes our engine go. Skepticism and snark is what we are built on. But you have to leave room for the reality that the simplest answer is always the right one. He might just have hip discomfort. And he might be looking at this as a business decision. I know I've got a guaranteed shot at $18 million in the FedEx Cup. If I, already I'm qualified, I don't want to push it. I'm going to rest up. I mean,
it's a very fair point. But my theory is a lot more fun.
Well, of course, and I genuinely think I leave room. I've accepted that he's probably gone. These people have been more right than wrong, but I also like to leave room in my brain for the possibility that he hasn't announced it yet. He hasn't said anything yet. And at any given moment, he could say, like, absolutely, I'm not going anywhere. I didn't feel the need that I had to address. Because he did say when, Cam Smith will be the person to talk about, or what do you say? Cameron Smith will be the only Cameron to talk about my future. And that's when Percy came out and did say, listen, I didn't talk to him. I talked to guys who, allegedly talk. So that's what also makes me think that he could be saying, like, that's noise. You people are all noise. Doesn't mean that his people weren't talking to Norman and their people, like all that.
But I'm sure everybody's people were talking at some point to them.
It's kind of like with a politician. You don't bring them any question or anything until they get to say yes. Like you don't. Yes. That's just, so same kind of thing with these golfers. Don't involve me until I want to be involved. In their teams. All right, so we like Tony Finau. We like Justin Thomas. We both like that. I still kind of am crushing on my JJ Spawn. I don't think he's one of my anchors because at 6K in 70 players, there's just too much juice up top to say, I'm going to trust him. But I like him to make some room for more juice up top, like a Matty Fitzpatrick at 9,500, who is not. I think it's the first time he's been brought up on our show, but this might be the first time that he's really.
We've definitely talked about him before.
No, let me rephrase that. Since the U.S. Open win, since the U.S. Open win, because kind of like he won, and then it was a whirlwind, but he's a ball striker. That was my point. Is he's one of those guys who obviously he showed with that bunker shot, he can do it under pressure, and I'm looking forward to watching this week, knowing that little FedEx Cup needle is going to be, jumping, and they've got the top 30. And like I said, every single one of these guys is sitting there going, I'm 64 away from putting myself in position for $20 million in the FedEx Cup.
Yep. I do. Before I say this name, I do want to see where he is in the rankings to really gauge his the likelihood of him.
Is it some JM?
No, because he's ranked was it 11th in the rankings? No, I want whether he makes it to next week or not doesn't really matter as long as he I think he's going to put in one big week to try to push, even if he's too far down the list to make it in. But I just saw him there. Yeah, he's 56th. But Lucas Herbert comes in tied for first in putting, third in strokes gained, short game, 14th in par fours. He's a guy who, sure, he missed the cut last week, but on a course where you had to be putting and in a big light course, he finished T15 at the Open a few weeks back, and I this is going to be a moment for him where he knows he's in a position where he has to perform, and if he has any shot to make it to next week, he might be too far out of it to have a legitimate shot, but I think he's going to go out as a guy who's not afraid of the lights, as a guy who can putt and do what he needs to do. I think he can put together some DK points for you this week to where, look, he's 6,100 on DraftKings, and he's projected to be 2% owned. He doesn't even have to finish top 20 to be worth his price so that you can get your Tony Finau, so you can get your Justin Thomas in there. So I think I'm going to take a risk with a little Lucas Herbert this week.
I like that. I like your logic behind it too.
Especially knowing that he can't miss the cut. He could, he could do 2 out of 4 rounds, be really good, and then just be even or over par for the other 2 rounds. But he still gave you 2 good rounds, and that's where you're going to get your points. So 2 good rounds will be enough to pay off $6,100.
If you need to make a little room in your lineup, Andrew Putnam is coming off a T5 and he's only 6,200. He doesn't exactly break the bank with the stats, but if you're talking about just riding a hot hand or a wild wave, Andrew Putnam is. If you haven't done so already, go subscribe to the show.
Yes,
find the little button on YouTube, click it. You don't even have to watch the whole thing right now. If you're coming in right at the end, don't worry. We'll see you later. You can also catch us on Spotify or anywhere else you find our podcast.
Yep,
Look
this
for
will it also will re-air at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning on Belly Up Sports YouTube channel. So you can watch it at any time. Plus on demand on YouTube. That's the way YouTube works.
This like mirrored camera thing really screws me up. But thank you once again to Fantasy National Golf Club. Shouts to the Moose, Belly Up Media for always for letting me crash your party and hang out in the clutch, and Piper for your ongoing support. It's gonna be a fun week with the BMW Championship. Look for us on Twitter at This Bud's For You, at Real Mr. Mallard, and we're gonna have some good stuff coming for you over the coming days and weeks. Andrew, back to you in the studio.
I mean, what else is there to say? You just closed the show out. I guess all that's left to say is goodbye, good night, and good day. Adios, everyone. See you next week, 8 o'clock Tuesdays, YouTube.